Before the Civil War, there were many slaves in the southern United States who attempted, and sometimes succeeded, in running away from their masters to freedom. Some settled in the northern U.S., but this was dangerous because federal law required fugitive slaves to be returned to their masters, and slave catchers were sent out to chase bounties on escaped slaves. Thus, many continued heading north to Canada, which was under the dominion of the British Crown. Joseph Taper was one such Virginian slave who escaped captivity to Canada, and in 1840 wrote about his experiences. He was incredibly grateful for his new life in Canada. Not only was he no longer a slave, or in danger of being captured and returned to his master, but the Queen of England granted him 50 acres of land, and a yoke of oxen and a plough to become a settled farmer. There were also good schools in Canada available for him to send his son Edward to become a scholar. Taper stated that he enjoyed more pleasure living in Canada 1 month than in his entire life living in the United States. He made a specific point to mention that Canada was a land of liberty, which is very ironic because the white residents of the U.S. also saw their country as a land of liberty that fought against the tyranny of the British Crown. But taxation without representation seems to be quite a mild form of tyranny compared to the tyranny white slaveholders imposed upon their flesh property. Taper's letter reveals the great hypocrisy inherent in the country of the United States. Ever since its declaration of independence, it has claimed itself to be a land of liberty, but that liberty was only for white people. The U.S. did not bestow liberty upon the Native Americans. One of the main causes of the American Revolution in the first place was because the colonists wanted to settle west of the Appalachian Mountains and push Native Americans off their lands, but the British Crown was against doing so. The U.S. did not bestow liberty on African Americans. Southern states held millions in bondage, and the northern states were complicit in returning escaped slaves to their southern masters. Britain abolished slavery in its colonies in 1833, 32 years before the U.S. did, after a civil war that claimed 750,000 American lives. And unlike the British, who gave fugitive slaves free land to farm in Canada, after slavery was ended in the United States, most African Americans were deprived of land ownership and were forced to farm their previous master's land in the exploitative system of sharecropping. Although the United States was a representative democracy, and England a constitutional monarchy, people like Joseph Taper and other minorities had far more liberty in America under the British Crown than they did in the so-called Land of the Free.